And I'll just read this last one. Number 258, the final one for today. True love is based on loyalty. True love is based on loyalty. I'd like to thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Nabab, Jadefre Hatap, and welcome to everybody to another Wu-Sabat Outformation class, UK. So we're moving into the next segment of today's session, which is the proof by Nabab Yaanuwn, part 12, dealing with the science of relationships. My name is Nabab Catney Hess, and I'm one of your student teachers of the master teacher, Dr. Malachi K.Z.York, delivering your session today, and Hara M. Habab, Jadefre Hatap, will be assisting with facilitating with any questions that you have today. Okay, if in terms of sound and visuals, just because of time, if there are any issues or problems with the sound, or you do experiencing any issues, please place in the chat area, which I am, yes, it's open for everybody. Place that in the chat area and we'll deal with any issues as they arise. Understand? I trust that all can see the visuals okay, because they're an important segment of today's session. So what we're going to do is just open the class positively with falsehood, which is a affirmation showing our connection with our ancestors and our alignment with natural nature and existence. If you just joined us for the first time, we are the United Sabians Worldwide. This will be done in the Sabaic language in the first instance, nothing to fear or to be afraid of. In the renewal of our culture, one of the things that has been gifted back to us by our ancestors by way of Nabab Yaanuwn, or the master teacher, Dr. Malachi K.Z.York, is our own language. So we're speaking back in our own tones once again, so that future generations will have a say. Not only the culture restored, but we're speaking in the Sabian accent and actually thinking in the mind of the language which our ancestors created for us to communicate with them and, of course, with each other. So a unifying gift and force for us in this day and time. So I'm just going to stop the music there. Okay, and let's go with
Nabab Natar Mukhtar Naut Mugdad Badet Patah Naut Mukhlas Badet Yaanuwn
falsehood.
Anuki Jawef Ashuk Hem Paut Wukalal Ashuk Kawun Jawef Neya Anuki Kasam Em Paut Paut Kawun Kasam Em Neya Anuki Wahu Amet Paut Paut Kawun Wahu Amet Neya Nakuk Kadur Najib Amet Kasam Em Paut Wu-Sabat Amet Mushkhas Nakuk Kadur Kawan Kalal Pafaf Nakuk Arad Jawef Paut Amet Waset Amet Aradni Kawun Laye Bakoy Jawef Paut Anuki Abed Layet Nafashni Paut Kawun Anuki Paut Kadur Nakuk Kadur Paut Amul Nakuk Amul.
Okay, so that was falsehood. So let's translate that into English for most if not all's understanding. So we start by saying, Holy, Holy, Master, Overseer, Almighty. And then we said, no God except Ptah, and no Savior except Yaanuwn. So Ptah being the head of the 9, and Yaanuwn as the 19th elder, as we explained in the previous parts of this class, incarnates to occupy the 25th seat, which is on earth, to convey the necessary information that we need in this day and time to aid our transformation journey from mortals back into deities once again. So the affirmation, and then we said, I am in the divine love of the all expanding, and all divine love is in me. I am a part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as a part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I wish in the all expanding, as long as my wish is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is, I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. Understood. So it's touching into, as I say, existence, and if you check out some of the previous parts of this class on our YouTube channel or Facebook page, you would understand, as I say, existence, or the importance of existence, obviously before creation, and that one of the aspects of that, when we see the does into do, is stillness, or motion, out of stillness. Understood? So things started with absolute, in that context, stillness, you understand, and emotion was birthed out of that. Yeah. And so if scientifically in Wu-Sabat, energy was derived from basic energy, and the characteristics of basic energy, it doesn't impart any force and doesn't have any motion in that context. But what is the proof of its existence? Well, one of the areas of that is that light speed, which is recorded to be 186,272 miles per second, overstood, is limited. Understand? So something is putting a brake clearly on the speed of those particles, and that is basic energy. Understand? Which keeps light at that constant speed, or light particles at that constant speed. Now, webinar for those that just joined us for the first time on the Zoom platform, and join us on Facebook Live. If you do want to have a more interactive session, then if you're on Facebook, the link, Class 2 link, is in the notes, and so if you feel free to join us on Facebook if you so choose. It takes about 20 seconds to register. If not, happy for you to join on Facebook Live. Any questions posted there will be dealt with after the class, who's not always monitoring the chat. Audio settings, if you need to adjust those, on the left-hand side there. Any feedback you want to give, you can use the chat. There's reaction buttons and things of that nature, so feel free to use them as you so wish. 2 ways to ask questions. It is an interactive session, so feel free to raise your hand, pose questions in the 2 ways that we've got available on the platform. So raise one's hand, you simply do that, and then what happens is we'll come to you by way of the facilitator, and you'll see this message appear on your screen when we call your name, and simply unmute yourself and you can ask your question directly. If you've dialed in, options are slightly different, so *6 to unmute yourself once prompted, and then *6 to mute yourself back again once you've asked your question. You have the ability to mute and unmute yourself at will, so once given that permission, once you've asked your question and finished your interaction, simply stay on mute as to not disturb the rest of the class. The other way to ask questions is to press the Q&A button if you don't want to come through live, and then you can just type your question in, and Hara'im Habab Jadefre Hatap in this instance, as your facilitator, will ask that question on your behalf. No poll questions today, so we'll skip that part. If you want a more detailed introduction of who we are, in the previous part or the first parts of the 2 classes we do in the month, tend to go into that in a bit more detail. Excuse me. And just for brevity, we will, and not to any kind of disrespect, but we'll keep this short so we can get into today's subject in a bit more detail. There's a lot to cover. So, Mary Abba York, we are a matriarchal culture, always have been in that context. I suppose patriarchy to some degree came in with force, I suppose, with the monotheistic religions as their deities, the Pleiadians and the Anunnaki, who are the sort of lord gods of the Bible as they have it today, which would include the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible as it's recorded today: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So in that context, the Anunnaki were patriarchal, and so that's why they refer to their deities or gods as he. But we, as the ancient Egyptians, ancient Africans, you understand, we were always matriarchal because that was what nature is. Nature is matriarchal, understood? And so things derive from the mother. The word mother in and of itself is the word M dash other. You understand? So M is the original, and then other representing the offshoot out of the original. Do you understand? Shown in M, you see in the Roman numeral, it means 1000, understood? And so the 1, excuse me, would represent, I suppose, in that context, the original. The zeros as the offshoot would represent versions of that. You understand? So in that context, so the 1 or the M is very important. And we see here the M as in Mary Abba York, the master of Dr. Malachi KZ York, and also shown as, I think, the owl, but shown as the owl in ancient Egypt in terms of the hieroglyphs, or Safaf, Pa Buam, as it's referred to in the Sabaic language, as the owl. You understand? So not OVO, and how it's been, a lot of our symbols have been taken and misused, understood, by those who, as I say, want to put an eclipse in front of the solar expression within our culture, understood, and repurpose symbols and signs for negative expression, as opposed to what they really and truly meant and the true meaning that sat behind them, understood. And so Mary Abba York, a very important, if not arguably the most important sacred feminine in the last 6,000 years, giving birth to Dr. Malachi KZ York, as I say, designed and developed and born into this world to deliver our people in terms of breaking the spell, the mental spell that was cast on our people over the last 6,000 years. So in ancient Egypt, that spell was known as the spell of Amam, which was the spell of amnesia. In Sumeria, it was known as the spell of Kingu, which dealt with the spell of religion. We started to step outside of ourselves and look externally for the divine. And then the last or the latter of that aspect being the spell of Leviathan, as classified in the Bible or the monotheistic religions, and that is dealing with the spell of money, understood? And so these 3 aspects cast, to say, by way of the Wicca religion and the Mukasus on our people, in the sense that's kept us spellbound, in the sense, and emphasized or placed with, let's say, monotheistic religions, insofar as it's making us subservient to other races. Do you understand? If you look at the sort of hidden structure behind it, in that regard. So very important that we understand our origins, understood, and starting points, and the importance of the mother, and how nature is restoring the female back to power once again. So Mary Abba York as the mother of Dr. Malachi KZ York, and this is her in our clan mother attire, as our culture is restored again. We see that matriarchal structure or matriarchal structures in place in our tribal expression. His father, sacred masculine, Al-Hadi Abdur Rahman Al-Mahdi. I keep saying I'm going to do a class on this, the Akasha records, just so people have some maybe understanding of that side. On Mary Abercran York's side, that is the Ghanaian and Yamasee Native American side of Dr. Malachi KZ York's heritage, and Al-Hadi Abdur Rahman Al-Mahdi is his father. It's where the Sudanese heritage comes in. Understood? From a great family, the Mahdi family, taking it back to a very prominent individual, Sayyid Muhammad Ahmad Al-Mahdi, a master spiritualist, born in 1845 to 1885. And Dr. Malachi KZ York, this is him at age 25. Let's say, in our ancient culture, we'll see as Wu-Sabat restored back to us in this day and time, we would know about the being Nabab Aktar, understand, or Akhtar. And this is a vehicle or a vessel that allowed our ancestors to speak through, as I say, to aid our transformation, realign us back with natural nature, and more importantly, with our etheric as well as physical ancestry, as we had stepped away from that, particularly, as I say, where others mixed in with our genes, and more acutely in the kidnapping of our people 400 years ago in the so-called slave trade. Understood? Well, a hybrid was created with the interference or interception, forcible interception with our genes, called the Negro. You understand? From the Latin word necra, which means dead. You understand? Where you get that neck or necra or necro. Yeah, necromancy is dealing with the dead. So you had a person who looked in the image and after likeness of what our ancestors, known as the Nafar or overseers, had created, optimized for this planet and this environment, yet was having the mindset of the Caucasian. Do you understand? So a separation occurred because of the interference in our genes, and then in a land which was not our own. And so this devastating consequence, coupled with the spell, meant that there was a misalignment which needed to be corrected. So this Amun Nabab Re Akhtar, you understand, at the end of the 24,000 year cycle, our story must be renewed. And so this being comes at the end in order to restore us back and realign ourselves with our own spiritual science, which in this day and time is known as Wu-Sabat. Our spiritual science or spirituality in this day and time is dealing with factual information to know things once again. And it is the unifying force, understood, of the Negroid or the Nagaru. Understand? And so our medicine, so to speak, designed for us in this day and time, starts off in an outformational context. So from the stars, as we can see in, people might say, well, from the stars or from what would be classified in modern terms as extraterrestrials, people say, well, you're crazy. That sounds crazy. Yeah, that you're saying that you're receiving information from the stars, which is informing how you move and your approach and your doctrine or the origins of your doctrine. But here what? With our doctrine, understood, unlike with the monotheistic religions, and not causing anybody any particular offense, but they haven't proven that the Garden of Eden existed. They haven't proven Noah's Ark existed. They haven't proved that these characters or names that they've given to these characters, the Abrahams, the Jesuses of this world, even existed, walked this planet physically, no bones, no DNA, no RNA. You understand? None of these things. You understand? However, when you look in the ancient Egyptians' doctrine, in the Kadem Mokmatu, and you look at us today as their descendants, our doctrine is backed up, understood, with what we see in nature. You understand? So what would I mean by receiving outformation? Well, everybody on the call understands and feels the particles, understood, received from the sun every waking moment of their day. Do you understand? I.e., that we're receiving those particles, radiated photons from the sun, and when they come here on Earth, we can feel them and we may perceive them in the form of heat, which is touching our body. So we're receiving outformation, even though we are in an informational context, because information is dealing with things that happen within this environment, i.e. the planet Earth, or Patanun, as we refer to it in the Sabatic language. And so we're receiving outformation coming to us in the form of information. Do you understand? And the planet and the way it's been designed by way of our ancestors, you understand, gives us only a sufficient amount of energy needed to sustain life here on the planet. In fact, we only use 1%, excuse me, or only 1% is allowed of the sun's immense, obviously, heat energy. 1% is needed to power, as I say, the various different systems that require solar energy here on the planet Earth. Understood? So we're receiving outformation into our informational present being, every waking moment of the day. So why would our doctrine, or the approach that our ancestors used to give us our doctrine, not follow the same pattern? Yes, what we've been teaching you over these 12 parts is to understand, as it's described, about the true jigsaw and about this thing called correlation. You understand? Where you're seeing patterns and things matching up, understood? Yes? Which is what we call reasoning. Yeah, we are a son of what? Who? Ray. Yeah, so that the things are being replicated or being delivered in cycles, which gives us clues and understanding to what came before us and what is to come in front of us. Do you understand? All within the period being referred to as now. So, yes, Dr. Malachi Kaiser York, and this was in talking about being incarnated by a being by the name of El Khadir to deal with the religious schools at that time. But when the nines aligned in September the 9th, 1999, and we were ready for our doctrine now in the second half an hour of the hour given to this particular elder out of the 24, then now was to do with our stuff. You understand? Our true ancient Egyptian culture in the form of Wu-Sabat. And so he learned about our true origins, in a sense, in and beyond the stars. Understood? And as you can see, the only people on the planet, or the first people on the planet, to build heaven on earth, not talk about it, not put it in a verse, and then have some esoteric understanding, but no evidence to back it up. Those who built heaven on earth are us as the ancient Egyptians. You understand? We mimicked the stars because we are stars. You understand? Just happen to be in the descended form from that gaseous state as 9 different species of Negroid or Nagaru. Any questions?
Yes, there is a question from Patsy. You say you are matriarchy. May I ask, do you view the real war is between the patriarchy system and matriarchy? Do you accept the male is born deficient and is causing chaos all over the planet, especially our men? Should any man be ruling Mother Nature's planet?
Well, as I don't see the war as patriarchy versus matriarchy. No, I don't see that. What we see is that things within society need to be corrected with facts. And the fact is that whether male or female, we should accept the fact that males, as the human species, or all human beings, sub-races, primary races, all came from the human species. That is the female species, or sacred feminine. That's just a straight up fact. Understood? And so correcting that, where we've been, as I say, or a lot of the world, I should say, has been ill-informed by way of poor translations, that the woman came out of the rib of a man, which has nothing to do with our origins, but it's what a lot of people have been led to believe. That is problematic. You understand? So certainly they call Dr. Malachi KZ the liberator of women simply because he has given the actual facts dealing with how women were here before men, and giving the facts dealing with the double X chromosome, importantly, and setting the record straight in regard to that. Now, does it mean any man can't rule? Well, it was a man who came and liberated the women. The women didn't liberate themselves. So in that regard. So it's not a case of us creating a war between men and women. What's happened in our culture is that the males and the females have had to be educated, and now you create a situation where we have sacred masculine and sacred feminine to rule alongside each other. Yeah, the circle and the square. Both of them are 360 degrees. They are equal, but they're not the same. Understood? A man being greater than a woman in what he does, a woman being greater than a man in what she does. Obviously, all of this is a guise into the next level of transformation or existence, where our transformation into spiritual or energy beings, gender is not a factor. Understood? So the reality is that in order for our society to work, I'm talking about us as Nagaru society, we have to accept certain realities of and talents and abilities of what women have and what female leadership brought to us previously. Yeah, we did not deal with things like which are innate more so in males, but not saying they're not prevalent in females, but innate in males, a bit being with competition and conflict resolution. Understood? What's happening now with a lot of the freedom that nature has now gifted back to the woman, she's using it to rule like men and not like she should do in her natural nature as women. And part of that, as we maybe talk about and touch upon today, is a misuse of the sexual power, as we see being promoted, not say women are misusing it, but what we see promoted in a lot of the society today, which the rulership means sexual expression. Do you understand? Or sexual freedom in that regard. I'm not saying those things are not important, but maybe that the female weight of rulership is needed to solve some of the problems in the world today. Less war, you understand? Ability, wealth distribution, fairness, you understand? These are the things, or many different types of things of the world that's been created, as you say, man's world, as James Brown said, but manifestation in a negative context. Those who are ruling with those characteristics, you understand, where their development has arisen out of conflict, not out of, as I say, out-intelligence coming to us in the form of intelligence, and then circumstantially allowing that to develop to solve problems or maintain, a positive a positive environment that enables species to coexist peacefully with each other. That is not the way. There are ways to prey on others, do you understand, subsist off of others, and this is what obviously is creating a lot of negativity. We need to move away from the conflict between men and women, because that is a strategy perpetrated on us, because they understand, as you've been talking about in these classes, that males and females, or Nagaru males and females coming together produces supreme beings. You understand? Our offspring are star children. And this is what they want to stop. Soulmates produces supreme beings, star children. So we need to optimize the way we, let's say, relate to each other, and this part of Wu-Sabat being reintroduced to our race once again is to restore the relationship back with male and females. It just means an understanding that women have to have, that you lost your power because you fell in love fall in love with your own creation, the male, and therefore became reliant on the male seed in order to fertilize your eggs. You understand? Which is obviously one of your innate purposes, was to reproduce life. So the moment you gave it over to men to fertilize your own eggs and fulfill your purpose, now you became subservient to men. When inherently you were gifted with the ability to fertilize your own eggs and clone yourself to produce another female, or had the option, as I say, of producing a male by mating with your mate or a male in order to fertilize the eggs that way. So the two were there optional, and we see other life forms. We mentioned the Komodo dragon before as a being that, as I say, switches between the two at will or in line with nature as is needed. Do you understand? So therefore, as I say, in restoring back, both of our minds have to be right, and people have to think more about the race than they do individual if we are to get back to sacred masculine expression and sacred feminine expression, understood as manifestation and manifestation of supreme beings, once again, are not acting as men and women. Any other questions?
Yes. Patsy goes on to say, look at the world that men rule. Dr.York came to inform, not to rule. Surely women need to be in charge to right the wickedness on the earth when she reaches her feminine status.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Take it. If that's what you think, take the rulership. But how are you going to take it? Men are not just going to give it up easy like that. You understand? So that's what I'm saying to you. Both have evolved to a certain point where they are equal but different. So why battle against each other? Rule alongside each other. You understand? As equals. Any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay, let's get back to where we were then. Excuse me. Right, so we were taking you through the genes and physical ethers. Yeah, so we were explaining to you that physical ethers are how humanoids of different races or planetary nations is what you describe as the species within that race. So we have 9 species within the Nagaru race, Dravidians you can see on the screen, 7 Asians or Mangalu, 3, and then Caucasians have 6. You understand? So, and within natural nature, races are locked into a certain frequency range. Yes, and so obviously we look different physically, but in terms of the communication with our ancestors, we're locked into a certain frequency range, which is unique to our species and unique to the race. You understand? Much like, as I say, you see the various different appliances in your home, which use different electromagnetic frequencies and are locked into certain protocols so they don't interfere with each other. Yeah, so in that regard. So we were talking to you about, that this alignment or this kind of communication, and where the confusion comes in is when, for example, in the context of the Negro race, their energy is being redirected to other than self and kind. Do you understand? So if you look here, for example, at the screen, we see at the bottom the Negro race as the descendants, you understand, the terrestrial sons, so incarnated sons who descended down from this energy state. Our ancestors who have transitioned still exist within us, in our genes, 4 generations, but reside in vast geometric fields surrounding the planet, do you understand, in terms of their awaiting their ascension journey as Etherians. And all of us come from our Etheric ancestors, who the Egyptians referred to as the Natharu, or overseers. Do you understand? Also, another name for them is the Murzaku, or the providers. Yeah, so we see here, and these are sons. Yeah, depiction of those are sons. Yeah, S-U-N, son, the physical son. That is our overseers. Do you understand? We don't worship our ancestors. We communicate with them. Do you understand? And so the Negroid race communicates with, for lack of a better word, Negroid Salafu, and that is linked to Panatharu, understood, who created us as the Nagaru. Yeah, so it's not multiracial, it's not or any of those contexts. It's specific to each race, aligned with their own ancestors who are responsible for their creation. And your culture and your, for lack of a better word, you understand, is that they use the word religion, you understand, should enhance this relationship. So as descendants, so I'm trying to get this mouse working, as descendants, okay, yeah, so as the descendants, you can see that your ascension pathway looks very similar to this. So your religion will guide you insofar as helping you to make these various different steps or stages in terms of you fulfilling your potential. And that's what your religion or way of life should be optimized to do. That may do other things, but optimize you to take advantage of this environment. And we, as the on the lowest level of the rung here, are both spiritual and physical beings, or etheric and physical beings, and therefore are able to communicate with those above, our Salafu, because we have both systems inside of us. Do you understand? Now, it's more difficult for them to communicate directly with us, to warn us maybe about certain things that are to happen, or give us guidance, because especially if we're not tuned in, you understand, or our vibrational rate is exceptionally low, too material, too physical, understood? And so messages that we should receive are being blocked, or it's difficult, as I say, because we're not vibrating on the right frequency level that our religion would dictate in Wu-Sabat, and therefore it's difficult for us to, because of our ignorance, to receive those messages. Do you understand? So bad information, do you understand, as we know, information keeps you in a certain type of formation. Bad information constrains your abilities. It constrains your talents. You understand? It constrains our potential. And so, therefore, we are, as some have described it, limping in the Olympics. Yes, or the Mars described it, limping in the Olympics, because we're not taking advantage of our true spiritual power in this regard. And so, directing our energy elsewhere is what religion seeks to do for us, or the monotheistic religions seek to do for us. That it is designed, as I say, to take advantage of our energy and redirect it to help others and keep us weak. Yes? And so I think a question was asked last class. Let's just go into this a little bit. And we were describing about this program, Rayeh Hara Achet, you understand, which is talking about, as I say, a race's basic, or program facilitates a race's basic purpose, that of directing its energy or life essence out of the physical plane, where it generates expanding consciousness, welcoming new, diverse experience and life into the etheric realm. What this is effectively saying is that basically us here in the physical, our energy, or our connected energy, should be linked to our ancestors. You understand? It shouldn't be going anywhere else. And what we were showing you, and what this diagram was showing you, is that at the point of death, that ba'a, you understand, it shatters into, you understand, multiple pieces, basically, or ka'as. understand? Spirits. And effectively, as I say, if they're of our own bloodline, which this diagram is showing, then we died in, let's say, a positive or agreeable state, but not in a fearful state, then that energy should align itself with these finite forms of energy, 9, 8, or 7 ether levels. Should we find ourselves now, because we died in fear or in a negative state, perception of death and things of that nature, then we could be now in the 6 to 1 ether level, and therefore this discarnate entities, what the D stands for there, are not going to be of our own bloodline. You understand? And therefore we become a battery. These things become a battery now for these lower level forces, as I say, that feed off of that energy. You understand? So, as I say, remember, the science of religion is the interference of the dead into the lives of the living, and the dead are those forces that must subsist, you understand, and feed off the living in order to survive. And so the society is set up in a way, as I say, to facilitate for them the redirection of our energy to feed their forces, and sustain them as a dead or decaying people, not only physically, but also, as I say, spiritually. You understand? They must subsist off of or cause the propagation of 6 ether forces that cause into decay, you understand, represent the force of death as opposed to living. Any questions?
Yeah, there's something in the question and answer section. It appears to be more of an observation. This is from Judy, and it starts, informing of us, sacred masculine and sacred feminine are superior in what each other does. Let's come together as self and kind.
Absolutely. Because if you think in nature, as I think we said in this class several times before, remember, as you get older in age, or you step into the third, let's say, trimester of life, from obviously first sort of trimester is 1 to 40, so you become an adult at 40. Then from 40 to 80. Remember, you start to, men will start to have reduced testosterone, and women will start to have reduced estrogen levels. Yeah, so you're becoming more neutral, in a sense, at least chemically speaking. Yeah, so what makes you a man or what makes you a woman, chemically speaking, are your estrogen and testosterone levels. So they start to decline as you get older, because we're going back to, as we described in those to you last week, you understand that our origins started off as what? Neutral gender beings. Yeah? Conjoined twins into hermaphrodites and hermaphrodites. You understand? Male with not both genitalia, but the energy of both genders inside. Hermaphrodite would be male, and hermaphrodite would be lean towards female, but neutral gender beings. Before we split out into single gender beings as male and female. You understand? So the fact of the matter is that you're reverting back as you prepare towards getting towards that in the second trimester, we're seeing that decline. And the third trimester, by the time you get to 80, you're already transitioning over to that spiritual realm. You're crossing over now into both. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to achieve, blessed enough to achieve old age, and you're getting ready to now transition into that spiritual gateway, and become an etheric being once again. Live that spiritual existence, and master that as you mastered the physical world. So your life journey, as I say, I think we were saying earlier, is mimicking what our doctrine is saying. Do you understand? So you're going back to what you originally were. So I'm not saying to say nature is obviously, through this doctrine, Wu-Sabat is female in origin. You understand? So, maybe the idea of the conflict, side of things, as you rightly say, I'm not saying it's an illusion, but it's, as you can see, it's developed out of ignorance. You understand? And they understand, as I say, if women start producing supreme beings again, yes, then the reality of the situation is that naturally will cause us as a race to come back into rulership, because it's allowing the nine or the divine mind to start to express itself as it should have always been doing through natural nature without the interference. We talked about us, or the origin of us from things, and the rules of existence became. The expression of the divine or nine mind through that process. Do you understand? That's not the same, as I say, for all other races. So, as I say, we've got arguments so there may be arguments to have. I think, men have to understand, as I say, the facts about their origin and where they came from, and melt away and this idea that the woman was created to be the man's helpmate. Do you understand? That is a religious ideology. She was never created to be man's servant or anything of that nature. And this is why in those books, The Sacred Masculine and or Wapian Man or Sabian Man and Sacred Feminine scrolls, where they're giving, information about maybe culturally how we need to adjust and interpret how we should be living together. It says, listen, if you are the man and you're working and your woman's not working, then basically, she should probably cook and clean and look after the home. And if you've got children, look after the children. If the woman is working and the man is not working, then he should be cooking and clean and look after the children, so on and so forth. If you are both working, then you need to work out a system where it's even. Now, of course, there are certain things that a woman naturally in the early years of the child is going to be better at, and there's certain things that, and throughout the lifetime in terms of a natural nurturing nature, and there's certain things that the man's going to be better at, and you play to those strengths in your partnership. Do you understand? And so that's how you have to be looking for it to work. And the more we do that individually in those relationships, then collectively it's going to be better. But a culture has to be restored. That's how you get back the right way, if you want to say the right way in inverted commas, for us to behave, because it's about peaceful coexistence. What do we need to do? What do we need to sacrifice to live peacefully and maintain unity amongst us as a race? Women getting into their head, of course, they're naturally progressive in the society and achieving great success and stepping into leadership roles, you understand, which is natural. But it's also, if you remember from the teachings from all the way back to the 80s in the True Light tapes, it was also saying that the Mukasu mind was exploiting that to cause separation in families by giving women in the society top jobs and paying them more money in certain instances than some of their male counterparts in the black community. It was talking about in the media context, understood. And so this would cause division and separation between us, because in their kind of world where the man makes more and he's leadership and that's seen as masculine, now all of a sudden when the woman's making more, that's causing conflict within the household, because of those reasons, because of the way we've been raised in the Western Hemisphere. You understand? Where if you look at if you look in nature, for example, and one of the, if you think about the pharaoh headdress, it represents the lion's mane. Well, look at the pride of how lions operate. Who does the work in that context? And no one's diminished because the women are going out there doing the work, and the male king or whatever in that context is not going out there and doing as much of the work, only when necessary or needed. You understand? In that context, it works in their society. So you've got to think we need to make it work in our society. Women say, well, I need a man who does great of or blah, 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 greater or earns more money than me or on the same level, etc., etc. Listen, it's whatever works best for the household, whatever works best for our society based on people's talents, abilities and skills. There are certain things, as I say, men are designed to do because they were physically designed that way in that regard as a protector. Does it mean that women can't play that role? No, doesn't mean that, but it means with certain attributes, excuse me, they may be gifted with, and you have to find a way to make that work together. This is why those parts are written as what? Guidance. You understand? A guide, not laws, you understand, but guidance for us to figure out the best way for certain things to work. The attacking of each other or women boosting up themselves because, as I say, it was designed in this society at least to cause division and separation in our household. And at the end of the day, if women looking at certain situations want true equality, you can just think about a situation like this. You can think about it could be raining, you're driving the car, you and your missus, yeah? So a man and woman driving the car, let's say the male's driving, just for example, yeah? It's raining. And what happens is you get a flat tire. The issue is that, you know, if you want true equality, then who do you expect to go out and change the tire? Yeah, who's supposed to go out and change the tire? Yeah. So the reality is, if you keep allowing the man to have to go out and change the tire, and you've got an issue with it, then you're never going to be truly equal. You're going to be still subservient to certain things. You understand? In that regard. Now, if both of you have got the skill and the ability to do it, and hey, the man says, "Listen, I've got this," you understand, and goes and changes the tire, so be it. You understand? But if you're in a situation where I expect him to do it and I don't have to do it or learn how to do it, etc., then there's going to be situations where you're going to continue to give up, as I say, subserviency to the man in that context. So we need to find a way of working together. Certain people are making money off of pointing out flaws and different things of that nature. But ask yourself, what is the underlying culture that they're telling you about? What is the culture that drives the decisions? You understand? There isn't one. Yeah, so there's no guidance there. What you're getting is a hybrid or pseudo version of religious ideologies that's telling males must do this, women must do that, a woman must cook and clean, be subservient to her man, da 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 da. Now, it's not a woman's nature necessarily to be up in a man's face, aggressive and all that kind of stuff. That's not their nature in that regard. So, and we're going to get into why that's taking place in this day and time when we step more into the genetic conversation. However, as I say, people should be working towards their nature, obviously a combination of their personalities, and then they're using their doctrinal understanding or understanding this doctrine as it sharpens up the mind to, as I say, sharpen off, you understand, some of these rough edges so that we can, as I say, fit nicely together in the building blocks, as I say, for a better life. And so it's not about competition, as I think Judith rightly pointed out, it's about coming together, but that takes work, you understand? And it may not be achieved fully in one generation. Now, back to where we were. I think did we go through this last week? I think we did. So, yeah, I think there was another question asked last week about, I think it was sort of sexual abuse and things like that in households. Obviously, we're not speaking to what's taking place in a local area anecdotally, but what we was explaining was this issue because about genetics and so informing nature. Now, in the original seeding of life here, 12 etheric entities from Orion, 12 etheric entities from the Sirius star constellation, which is why you see in our structures the sort of Queen's Chamber points towards Sirius and King's Chamber points towards the Orion star constellation, because it's describing our spatial, you understand, or outformational origins, because the genes came from outside, understood? And so and were pre-programmed on the thyroid, program the males with 9 skills and program the females with 9 skills, as we can see here, making 18 skill sets. So it's not just a thing of, they would talk about evolution in their context, understood, but we're not talking about evolution. In the revolutionary context, yes, we started off with inherent abilities, which then now genetically get randomly expressed, understood, as males and females come together. Now you understand, not in a that basically when certain skills were discovered, your name of that you may be assigned to, which gives a certain type of expression, meaning that then if you had son or children or whatever, they may carry that name forward if they're expressing those same skills, and you would develop those skills within the genes. You understand? So I don't know, like a name like Hotep at the end of a person's name might describe an ability to teach, for example. And so as you continue to have offspring or offspring within a particular genetic line, they may then recreate orders or whatever to then develop certain talents, abilities, and skills. But as you can see, we were inherently blessed with those within the genetics, or programmed with them, for them to express themselves in forming the building blocks, as I say, of a constructive and productive society. Now, the question was asked about the son of adverse behaviors popping up in society, and we explained about this DUF 1220 on the first chromosome as a designer gene, which was a combination of as I say, Anunnaki genes, Pleiadian genes, and also the use of the simian. And we explained to you last week that we did not come from the monkey. Understood? That is talking about Caucasian, other sub-races origins. We came from the waters of this planet. Understood? Excuse me. So that was a specific type of design, as I say, to control, yes, this race that they were creating in their image and after their likeness. And because of the use of the simian genes, that their mind doesn't evolve past the point of the age of 13, hence their bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs, you understand, when the person becomes a man, but they don't evolve past that age, you understand. This is one of the reasons of so much conflict, because you've got a young, you understand, or a childlike mind manifesting itself or controlling the planet, you understand. And when you look around, what we see here is a lot of games, you understand, conflict, competition, you understand, all the things that we would see potentially in young children before we mature and maybe burn those out if we achieve the sort of right or correct level of raising, maybe, we're able to resolve conflict in a non-violent way. Yeah, so this is what they wanted to create. And as I say, particularly with the Pleiadians, understand, their, how to describe it, you know, their ideology, yes, was that development through conflict. You understand? Now, for those who are a bit of a sci-fi buff or whatever, Babylon 5, in that series, they talked about 2 different races there. I think they were called the Shadow People, interesting enough, I think, in that series. And that was their ideology, that they would they would come together against the other groups, which were their children, and they believed that conflict was developed through war. You understand? And in this reality context, not in the sort of fictional world, the Pleiadians have a similar type of mindset. You understand? That the development of the genes in this context, or their genes, is developed through conflict, war, putting people under certain pressure. You understand? Brings out the development, you understand, or the growth within them. You understand? So this was a pathway they laid out for their ancestors. So this is something not really talked about a lot, is that a lot of the behaviors that the Mukasu or the Caucasian is exhibiting is by way of their natural design. Do you understand? So this is the issue that they're contending with. Yeah, the nature of what their deities or gods, as would be have it, the modern day term, extraterrestrials. That's how they design them to be. You understand? And obviously their true origin and purpose, as we know, was created to be a disease in a war that took place. So the issue is they're not happy today as they start to look back at some of the ancient records, finding their story, do you understand, in places like Iraq, Turkey, and seeing where they truly came from. They're not happy with, obviously, the results of their sort of archaeological research, in a sense of who they really are or what their deities created them to be. So this, importantly, or this programming or designer genius is referred to, DUF 1220, led to not necessarily just skills, but more obsessive type behaviors, still in certain instances skillful, you understand, but emphasizing, let's say, in some of the things you see in here, even the over-sexualization, seeing that we're seeing a serious proliferation of that in this day and time, but now in more obsessive behaviors, do you understand? And we're seeing that, as I say, some of those things are positively expressed, some of those things may be negatively expressed. So the word savant, as you see there, is really the word servant. You understand? So I think it's in Genesis 9:25 where Ham, you understand, was cursed, or Ham's son, was cursed unto the fourth generation, or Canaan was cursed. But obviously the curse was for Ham's actions, for looking at the nakedness of his father, and the curse came out on his fourth generational son, in the form of Canaan. You understand? So in that context, I was going to say for a second. So in that context, we're seeing a change in genetics. But one of the things, if it's come back to me now, so one of the things that Canaan was cursed with was a servant of servants unto his brethren. You understand? So he was to be a servant, to the other brothers. And so in that context, the word servant is really the word savant. You understand? Because in certain instances, we're seeing that you get sometimes genetic defects. And so they understand the importance of 1220 in what they would describe as the development of the primate brain. Yes, but the primate, as you know, is dealing with this simian lineage, which for us, only by way of mixing has that set of genes come into us, but our origin, as I say, was in the waters, single cell amoebas planted here. When you look at the word savant, it links to the word sapien. So when you're saying Homo sapien, for example, the word sapien, in a sense, it really means wise. So they're looking for a wise or an informed servant in that context that was developed to mine the gold and other minerals that they needed to repair their or restore the environment, of their depleted atmosphere in that context. So they were looking for gold to be mined, need an intelligent servant in order to do that work. Understood? So servant and savant is servant and savant are effectively the same word. That's what they're really talking about. You understand? And that 1220, DUF 1220, was an important, as I say, gene insofar as creating savants. You've seen situations where, for example, on this particular slide, we see trisomy. Maybe I didn't copy that one, but trisomy 21. Trisomy 21, which is, you see it on the 21st chromosome, if memory serves me correctly. But it's got 3 copies and it creates a Down syndrome child, for example. But you can have them with certain traits or certain skills, for example, or you've seen people in accidents, car accidents, maybe hit brain damage or whatever. So there's a depletion of some of their senses or skills, but for example, they may be able to play the piano like pitch perfect. You understand? Just having listening to a tune once or reading it once and then can play the tune pitch perfect. You got people who can, you understand? They may not be able to talk properly or can't express themselves, but you put a canvas in front of them, they can do a photo. You understand? Realistic drawing. You get instances of, say, I think in the film with Ben Affleck, I think it's called The Accountant. You understand? The guy was a mathematical wizard. You understand? So this is the type of stuff that arose, yes, out of DUF 1220, and also, as I say, over-sexualization, things of that nature, based upon the nature of who was utilized, as I say, to make these beings, you understand, in their genes. This is where we talked about last week, that they had to be civilized. It's not a thing. The word civilized implies, the reason why we don't say that we are civilized, because it implies that you, at some point, you were barbaric. You understand? It had to be civilized. So there's an issue, as you see there, with you have the person's nature, you understand, their natural nature, understood, what they were designed to be based on their genes and the environment that they were placed within and how those genes are then expressing themselves. And then somebody's had to come along now and give them a culture and civilize them, because they're going mad. They're going wild, you understand, in messing up the natural environment. So they had to be civilized. They had to be taught how to be civil, how to cooperate, work within the environment. The Santa was doing a madness, raping, killing, etc., etc. So you see here that how a person's raised, what they're taught, the education, etc., etc., civilizes the person, you understand, and controls, if possible, their nature. And some don't want to conform to those teachings and want to express, you understand, maybe that nature which is adverse, you understand, in terms of its behaviors. I think there was an actor, Liam Neeson, who got caught in what they would describe as controversy because he was telling a story about in some movie that he was promoting, where a friend of his, I can assume she was Caucasian, was a victim of rape, which the suspect was reportedly black, and that he went out and basically was looking for the first black person he could find and was basically going to assault, or, you know what I mean, if possible, kill the person. Do you understand? Now, the point is that if you've got any type of intelligence about you, the person who you should be directing your anger is the person who did the rape, not the person who, anybody who looks like the person who did the rape. That's low intelligence. Do you understand? And so, but what it is, now he's saying he didn't know why, or was describing he didn't know why he felt that way, etc., etc. Well, if your nature is designed to oppose a certain group of people, do the absolute opposite, because your rise is their decline. And saying you've designed to subsist off of them and others like them in order for you to progress. Well, that's your nature coming out, isn't it? So you feel like, well, let me go and attack anyone. Yeah, and he couldn't explain why. Well, why can't you explain why? It's because it's your nature. You've been civilized, or supposed to have been civilized, to do the opposite of that. And saying that's not agreeable behavior. You understand? And as usual in those instances, you know, black people were jumping out, defending him, saying he's not a racist or whatever, but he was using still the same derogatory language towards blacks, which, you know, blacks just don't randomly, if possible, you've been victim of racism, don't just randomly just be calling people names unless there's racial names, unless there's an incident that has arisen as a result of it to describe it as racial. We see it in reverse, that, you know, when something happens, racial is the sort of almost the first thing or go-to thing that the Mukasu have a history of using against blacks. You understand? So we see, as I say, this proliferation of certain behaviors within a society, which, as I say, if unchecked, that absolute natural nature is going to come through. And as I say, in early times, you saw, like I say, the Vikings. There's even, I think, a series on it's Amazon or one of those platforms where you're seeing, the activity of what these 6 kingdoms went around doing and how they spread their seed and how they spread their dominance. That's the nature, you understand, of the design and what their ancestors, as I say, placed within their genetics in order for that to be expressed in that way, and did not see anything wrong with it. The issue for them was they couldn't control them. They became out of control. Yeah, so they had to put things in place, i.e. a religion, a culture, and a structure to keep them in check. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, so I'm not going to go through all this. Yeah. So getting into the sort of genetic discussion, some of you may be familiar with it, some not so. So the 2 U's, you understand? As you can see at the top. So the inner you, the real you, and then there's you that you show to the world, you understand? And what you pretend to be. So looking at yourself, and I suppose you were to look in the mirror and analyze and study yourself, when you're thinking about the makeup of a human being, you understand, or us, then you have to consider yourself as a culmination of 30 personalities. Do you understand? Now, if your parents are alive, then that number will go down to effectively down to 28. You understand? If one's passed, for example, it'll be 29. You are at the top of the pyramid. You understand? So you're a culmination of 4 generations, and then that sit within inside your bloodstream. And so the voices that you're hearing every day or every waking moment of your day relate to the expression of the desires of these personalities in your bloodstream. Understood? Yeah. So understanding you in genetic form, who you are as a person, is your combination. Yes, 1/3 your mother, 1/3 your father. Yeah, and the 2 of them coming together creates a third for the whole. Yeah, which is a new you. Understood? And we already discussed it in previous classes. Yeah, the expression of the mind going forward. You understand? By bringing the mother and father into creative unison with each other for what they represent within existence, allows a child to be produced. Yes? But your mother had a mother and father, and your father had a mother and father, and so on and so forth, all the way to 4 generations. So genetics or genes shift, or the genome shifts every 4 generations. You understand? So this is you. Yeah, so when a person is saying, for example, about star signs in that context, well, notwithstanding the fact that the calendars are wrong, so that's one issue there. But when a person says, I am a certain, let's say I'm Pisces, for example, well, you have to take into account not only the time of the year that you were born, but you would have to include your mother's star sign and your father's star sign, because you'd be a minimum combination of those 3. And then you have to take into account, the remaining people within your 4 generations. You understand? So you're not one star sign if you believed in star signs. You're not one star sign. You are a combination or conglomeration of those signs. However, and this is one of the reasons why we didn't use it for individual, let's say, readings in that way. Yeah, horoscopes. Yeah, came in with Alexander the Great Killer. So they're the ones who adapted that thinking, or horoscope thinking. When we were looking at the pathway of stars, and I suppose how that affects the qadr or fate of human beings, we looked at it in the context of the whole tribe. So not on us as individuals. So to recognize there are solar biological impacts, there are lunar biological impacts on our biological systems, and it can have an impact depending on the time of year that you're born. It can have an impact on the type of personality you are, but you have to take into account all of these factors. You understand? This is where the confusion can come in. So we never used it for that purpose because it obviously it's unreliable. Yeah, because you got so many factors in this context to consider. So again, you can see the fact that it's us recording the fact it's outformation into informational context in this symbol. So on this planet, just so you understand the origin of race, you understand, before we get into the individual details of us expressions. So we've got you as a 30, but so in terms of 9 ethers, we went from 9 ethers. So remember, that's 9 different species within the Negroid race. So from the sort of caramel color in South Africa to blue-black, let's say, of the Congo, 9 different hues or 9 different physical ethers or species within our race. Now that came from 9 mind, you understand, which gave birth to the 9 people, which Patar, we said Patak Yud earlier, the 9 people governing or over this aspect of existence for us the 9 is 9 deities, Patar being the head of those. Those 9 people or 9 principles in the context of 9 different species gave birth to 9 different dwelling places. Yeah, so physical areas where the mind in the form of us as a species now or a people could express itself. Do you understand? Land, sky, waters, caves, hills, deserts, ice, trees and forests, you understand, is where again this correlation takes place. Yes, so 9 dwelling places created for these 9 different species, allowing, as I say, the mental expression here in the physical to experience, yes, physical existence as part of their ascension journey. And here, just to make it sort of clear, in the sort of rules in relation to that, is that we talk about 9 planetary nations in relation to race. Yeah, so there should be really a proper title. Do you understand? And here you see that the Nagaru race as the mother race, let's say, of all the races here on the planet Earth, is referred to for that reason as the all race. Yeah, the all race. You understand? In this context, so you can see here from 363. Yeah, so there are 9 distinct features in our own race. Yeah, features or distinct or characteristics or traits. Understood? Yeah, is what is obviously being referenced here. As say, we have 9 subspecies as a result. 364. After the planet was healed, many died off, yet the mixing resulted in today's 9 distinct features of our race. That can be said that of the other 2 Salalu races, free of Nagalnad, yeah, Mongoloid, 6. That can be said of the 2 races, 3. So 3 physical ethers, yeah, for the Nagalnad Mongoloid, 6, yeah, 6 physical ethers, you understand, of species within the Caucasoids as well. 365. As you compare today to the 3 major races and the numerous subdivision race of human beings called planetary nations on Plan ET and extraterrestrials plans. We know that Plan ET is really, if you read it with dyslexia, the extraterrestrial plan, but races are called planetary nations. 366. The 9 subdivision races of deities constitute this universe, which Ptah is the head. Papa, the all race or universe nation on Makab, Mata'ah, planet Earth, and by extension of all, or Papa, or the all, this Wahoo Makwan universe, and all of the Kaleh Makwanat omniverse, know yourself. You understand? So here, planetary nation is description for race, yeah, an updated terminology to use. So as we expressed earlier, yes, 1/3, 1/3. This is a true Trinity, not God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. This is the true Trinity being referenced. You understand? So 1/3 is your mother, 1/3 is your father, and that combination produces a new you. And as I say, we can see here that the star of life, yeah, or the sperm that's carrying that spark, obviously deposits the egg in that regard for fertilization. So that one singular sperm is the one carrying the spark, and that in theory should be every one of us, you understand, with a soul, or who has a soul, because as I say, this star of life is the expression of the mind tumbling forward, and as I say, bringing that mother and father, or what they represent in physical existence, in order to facilitate the life journey for us as human beings in that context. Now, gender. Gender is determined, and we explained this last week about why you'd end up with a male child, or why you'd end up with a female child. But gender is determined between the 6th and 9th week from conception. You understand? Now, we talked, this relates to something quite different, where you can have a scenario or situations where somebody who has died prematurely, understood, the spirit of that person they died in circumstances that, say, didn't allow them, I suppose, to fulfill their potential, can, in certain circumstances, in-house a physical host of the baby, understand? And in certain instances, that person may be, let's say, for example, if there was the spirit of the person was male, and they inherited or in-house or hosted a body who was female, what it can lead to as a consequence of that, it's not the only reason that happens, but it's one of the reasons why it happens, where you can get this spiritual host, not the host, the actual in-housing spirit of the person, the expression can be overwhelming for that child. And so it may be that you're now seeing an expression where the person is saying they feel they're in the wrong body, do you understand? Or, as I say, in this context, if it was a female spirit in-housing the body of a man, then, you understand, they want to wear women's clothes and things that are children, girls' clothes and things of that nature. And it could be interpreted as, oh, the person is trans, or they're whatever, maybe they're gay, or whatever the case may be. And the worst thing that one can do is react to that early, because the spirit of the individual leaves the child by age 9. You understand? If the person is truly of that, and we'll get into that if not later on the next part, but if the person truly is that, then they're born that way. There's nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. And so, you understand, you have to learn to accept that for what it is. Do you understand? They're born that way. Defects happen in nature, and we live with them all the time. And some people born bad eyesight or whatever, and wear glasses from a young age. It is what it is. Do you understand? So it's part of things that happen because of the way we've regulated our genes. But in this context, as I say, because the spirit of that person hosts up until age 9, that influence maybe over the expressions and behavior of the child is diminished, you understand, once the spirit leaves the host of that person. So only able to occupy for the first 9 years of the host's life. Yeah, so again, sort of showing you here the ether ranges in connection to the different races here. And as you can see here, that the females vibrate, or white Caucasian females vibrate up to the 6 ether range, but the males only go up to 5 ether. 5 ether range in that regard. We've got some mixed and asexual in this regard. So it's a close link between the world of energy and the material world, and as I say, categorized as somethingness, as we've shown you many times before, versus nothingness, but all of still existing, you understand, within the environment. Now, here we see, again, just understand of male and female and who we are. So we see that male DNA reflects a forward position, as one may describe it, as the future, whereas the female DNA, by way of mitochondria, and if she continues to have daughters, that innate ability, as I say, to carry the history of the family passed on only from daughter to daughter. Understood? In that regard. And as I say, we touched upon last week that this woman will transform into, if she encounters someone with higher genes, she's going to transform to match their design, match their nature. Now, we talk here, you see the 2 souls, I think it was comes last week, last one before, and the 2 spirits, the Ka'a spirit and then the Fash spirit there. Ka'a, as we know, enables us to draw down information from the mental reservoir, and then the Fash is effectively your DNA and RNA. That's your personality coming forward here. And aliquity, so I suppose the vibe or the essence describing, and the Fash is the personality. Yes, the DNA and RNA expression is where we get your personality traits. So let's look at the genetic kiss. I think it's probably a video about genes. It's worth a quick watch or recap for those who haven't seen it before. Just bear with me. I think it's all about genes.
Stated Clearly presents, what exactly is a gene? Each one of our cells contains 46 strands of DNA. A single strand is made of millions of particles called nucleotides, and these nucleotides come in 4 different types, which scientists have labeled A, C, T, and G. A gene is a special stretch of DNA, a sequence of A's, C's, T's, and G's that code for something. A gene contains information for a cell to read and use, but what exactly does that information do? You might have heard that there's a blue-eyed gene, a freckle gene, possibly even an anger gene, but single genes don't literally make things like eyeballs or freckles or temper tantrums. Genes make proteins. Those proteins then interact with each other and all sorts of chemicals inside the body to build things like eye pigments, freckles, and mood-altering hormones. A single strand of DNA contains thousands of genes or unique protein recipes. Humans have roughly 20,000 altogether. Some genes are small, only about 300 letters long. Others are well over 1 million. The length and sequence of a gene determine the size and shape of the protein it builds. The size and shape of the protein determine the function that protein will have inside the body. Hemoglobin, for example, is a protein structure found in red blood cells. Its unique shape and size allow it to capture oxygen molecules when blood flows near the lungs, and then release them later when blood flows near oxygen-starved tissues. Pepsin is a digestive protein. Its unique shape allows it to break down food inside your stomach so it can be absorbed by the body. Keratin is a structural protein. Its unique shape and size allow it to link together with other keratin proteins to form hard structures like fingernails, claws, and beaks. Different creatures have different genes, which is ultimately why their bodies look and function differently. But one of the many reasons scientists believe all life on Earth is related is that the basic DNA code, the language of A's, C's, T's, and G's, is pretty much the same for all living things. Many creatures even share some of the same genes. You might not be too surprised to learn that humans and chimps, which are closely related, share 96% of their genetic code. But what would you think a lowly fruit fly has in common with a beautiful swimsuit model? Surprisingly, about half of its genes. Because all creatures use DNA in pretty much the same way, genetic engineers have found that if they take a gene from, say, a bacteria cell and insert it into the DNA of an animal or a plant cell, that animal or plant cell will then read the new gene and produce the bacterial protein. Engineers have mixed and matched the genes of different organisms to produce many new creatures, including corn that is toxic to insects but supposedly safe for human consumption, tomatoes that last up to twice as long in the grocery store before going bad, and a new form of bacteria that produce the human protein insulin, which we then collect from these bacteria and give to people with diabetes who need extra insulin to survive. So just to sum things up a bit, what exactly is a gene? A gene is a special stretch of DNA, not the entire strand of DNA, just a segment that codes for something. Each gene is like a unique recipe, which usually tells a cell how to make a protein or a group of proteins. Different creatures have different genes, but all genes are written in the same basic DNA language of A's, C's, T's, and G's. I'm John Perry, and that's genes stated clearly. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, make sure to give us a thumbs up on YouTube and share it with your friends on Facebook or Twitter.
So, basically, in terms of our understandings, we have 24,000 genomes understood, and so clearly the greater genetic capacity also allows greater mental expression. So we've got some physical characteristics that relate to, as I say, those kind of basic codes. In that regard, remember they sort of the DNA code comes out of the center of the nucleus, or let's say nucleus of the cell, let's say that, in a single strand fashion, and then things called ribosomes take the code and read them 3 letters at a time, and then they use the name's gone from my head just for a second, to build proteins. You understand? Amino acids. There we go. So they build amino acids, 19 different types, to build, as I say, different protein configurations within the body. So that's exactly describing how the physical structure of your DNA is formulated. Now, the reality is that, so a perfect almost copy of you is retained in every cell. Now, a lack of understanding, which has obviously been enhanced by Dr. Malachi KZ York for us to understand, is that you have different types of DNA. This understanding is not necessarily there in modern day science or modern day biology as they have it today. Yes, so 24% of that DNA is in what we describe as a transient state, insofar as it is it changes based on the environment, based on our interactions, etc. So it's constantly changing, whereas the other 76% is a bit more static in that regard. And so I'm speaking to you now. The music's playing. All of this stuff is altering our DNA, and changing it in that regard. So the importance is that you, as an individual, as you talked about the rules of things, whole and part, sometimes can be one and the same, is that a copy of you is contained within each and every cell within your body. You understand? In the nucleus of that cell. Now, your mitochondria DNA is unique because it sits outside of the cell. Understood? However, because a copy of you is in every cell, and we just talked about the fact that your aspects of your DNA will respond to the environment that you're in. You understand the circumstance of that environment that you're in, and things that you take in as well. So you are what you eat, they say, because, well, some of your DNA is reacting to what you're bringing in, you understand, and fueling it with. So in this context, the DNA can alter and change, you understand, based upon, as I say, certain external that become internal factors. So when we look at the word kiss, we can see here Middle English, but this yielded to kiss from the verb kiss of death, figuratively speaking. So when you kiss, for those who are familiar with this, we reverse the word and we get the word sick. Yes. And what that's basically saying is that if you don't intend to take on another person's personality, don't kiss them. So you're made up of 30 individuals, as we said, you at the top of the pyramid, and because a copy of you is in each and every one of your cells, do you understand? So a perfect copy of you in each one of your cells. When you kiss somebody, because within your saliva, for example, there are, you understand, millions of cells or hundreds of thousands of cells in that context, then now you're exchanging DNA with the person. Understood? So this is a simple kiss, means that you're inheriting, all of the traits, the genetic traits at least, of those individuals. You understand? And if that wasn't your intention, they shouldn't kiss. Now, can it have an influence on you? Yes, it can. Now, let's separate out something. So I'm not sure we did cover it last week. So you have traits and you have personality traits and characteristics, and then we have physical traits and characteristics. So now the characteristics of races are, I suppose, in this context, are unique traits that act like like a barcode would be to a product, or like when farmers stamp cattle so they know obviously it belongs to them and their farm. Understood? So these characteristics are traits that our intelligent designers, our ancestors, have left in there to give, let's say, unique qualities and identifiers to know who is who on the planet Earth. So we all descend from the Sands people, known as the Bush people or Bushmen of South Africa. You understand? So the 9 ether trait, as we talked about, having 9 different species, and part of that is our kingly, or kinky as they say, hair. This is a unique trait to us. In fact, the only people on the planet, or only human beings on the planet with hair. Everybody else has fur. Because when we see straight hair on animals, we say that is fur. Yes, we see it on dogs, we see it on bears, all manner of animals. Say that is fur. When it's on human beings, all of a sudden, we say that's hair. Well, that's not true. Only people with hair is Negro or Negroids with the intense curls. Now, the indented chin, as we see here, is a trait of the Dravidian or East Indian, of which they have 7 species or 7 physical ethers within them. As we said, I think previously, the Chinese are not the origin of the Chinese eye, or so-called Chinese eye, or the folded eyelid. Some people say Chinese eye, maybe it's a nickname more so. But the folded eyelid in the sound, which is an Oriental trait there, but originated in the Sands people first. So the Sands people basically have, and excuse me, this fourth one here, we see that this protruding brow at the end of the forehead is an Aboriginal trait, of which they have 8 species. So, but what they don't have, the Sands people, is the light colored pupil of the Caucasian. You understand? So they have all the characteristics of the other root races inherently within them, but they do not have the colorless eyelid or light colored eye. The illusion is it's giving off that color of the Caucasian. Yeah. So this is seen to be one is seen to be within natural nature, and one is outside of natural nature, so artificial in this context and defective. Any questions? Any questions?
No questions.
So you have characteristics that, again, are unique to races. And so, again, if we all came from the same point of origin, yeah, then, you know, why have you got all these different characteristics and unique traits to these different races and then falling on sub-races? Now, some people say, well, white people are white because they came out of Africa and then inhabited colder climates. But then how do you explain penguins? You know, because penguins are not white. How do you explain killer whales? Yeah, how do you explain snow leopards? Snow leopards are not white. There's many things in cold environments that are not white. You understand? And in fact, if you look, white in nature is a defect. You understand? Or having colorless is an albino trait. So it's a defect within the genome. You understand? And in that context, I suppose the purpose of being white in a snow type environment, it helps predators to catch other types of prey, isn't it? Because it's difficult, or can be difficult, to see, innit? You blend in with the environment. So it makes you an apex or a better predator within the environment. You understand? So, but there are things in the environment that are not white. So that argument is flawed. You understand? So white or colorless or transparent arises from a defect. You understand? Or a double recessive genetic trait. You understand? In that context. But we have different ear types. This is describing or showing here that you can associate with different races. You understand? So if we all came from Adam and Eve, as they want to believe, well then how were these things? How the different blood types, etc.? We just came from 2 people. You understand? So again, each of the different races having their own characteristics, yeah, unique design. The Negroid ear, for example, without the lobe, mimics the embryo, and this is why we can see the correlation once again, you understand, with these optimized traits for us. Yeah, but you see them now in certain instances, or this Lord of the Rings or obsession with wolves and these types of things. So people are now using procedures now to give themselves pointed ears like elves in their mythology. Understood? Which is kind of crazy. Yeah. So again, anti-nature, nature. So a nature of being anti-nature. Yeah. In this regard. So you see characteristics and traits, physical characteristics and traits built into the design. You understand? Based on ancestors. Yes, of course. This can be modified through mixing and some changes arising over time. But the idea is to say some things may be environmental factors over multiple generations where you can see shifts and changes, But this is explaining to us about characteristics built in by the designers who created them. Do you understand? And again, in this instance, you're seeing them reverting to cosmetic procedures to get themselves pointed ears, but the eye color, for example, and things of that nature, is down to the animals that were used in their makeup. One of them being the canine, in that regard, which is where you see people with obviously two different colored pupils, for example. I think it's called heterochromia. That is a disease that only arises in wolves. Yeah, so they're showing you that certain animals, as I say, were used in the construction of certain human beings, and those traits are still prevalent today and form part of their nature. Yeah, so let's just go back. Interested in any of these for now. So going back to those genes and the exchanging of genetics. Yeah, so and the importance of a kiss, because, as I say, each one of your cells contains a physical copy of you that, if placed in the correct environment, they would be able to clone you physically, at least, from, as I say, one cell in your body. So you're taking on, as I say, by kissing or any other exchange of fluids with another human being, you're taking on their 30 personalities, you understand? And potentially, if others within that then mix themselves, you understand, and the snapshot that was taken to formulate you, then you've got multiple 30s, understood, depending on who these individuals within your 30 exchange fluid with, or 1 plus 29 or 1 plus 28, you being at the top of the pyramid.
Stated Clearly presents, what is DNA and how does it work? DNA, also known as deoxyribonucleic acid, is a molecule.
Yeah, we'll look at this. We'll look at this. Yeah.
Stated Clearly presents, what is DNA and how does it work? DNA, also known as deoxyribonucleic acid, is a molecule. It's a bunch of atoms stuck together. In the case of DNA, these atoms combine to form the shape of a long, spiraling ladder, sort of like this one here. If you ever studied biology or saw the movie Jurassic Park, you probably heard that DNA acts as a blueprint or a recipe for a living thing. But how? How on earth can a mere molecule act as a blueprint for something as complex and wonderful as a tree, a dog, or a dinosaur? To help answer that question, let's first take a quick look at amino acids. Amino acids are tiny little chemicals inside our bodies that are so important, they're often referred to as the building blocks of life. There's about 20 different kinds, each with their own unique shape. The neat thing about them is they can be attached to each other, kind of like Legos, to produce an endless variety of larger particles known as proteins. Amino acids make up proteins. Proteins, along with other chemicals, combine to form living cells. Cells make up tissues. Tissues make up organs. And organs, when they're all put together and functioning, of course, combine to form living creatures like you and me. These proteins that make up our bodies, and keep in mind, there's millions of different kinds of proteins. They each have to be formed in the perfect shape in order to function. If they're the wrong shape, they usually won't work. That's where DNA comes in. DNA does a lot of interesting things, some of which we don't fully understand, but one of its main and most well understood functions is to tell amino acids how to line up and form themselves into the perfect protein shapes. In theory, if the right proteins are built at the right time and in the right place, everything else from cells to organs to entire creatures will come out just fine. This here is a simplified model of DNA. It shows us that the steps of the ladder are made up of 4 different kinds of chemicals shown here by different colors and letters. If you look at just one half of the molecule, You can read its chemical sequence or genetic code from top to bottom, sort of like a book. A single strand of DNA is extremely long, millions of letters long. It spends most of its life coiled up like a noodle, living inside the nucleus or the centerpiece of a cell. Amino acids, however, live outside the nucleus in what's called the cytoplasm. To help DNA interact with the cytoplasm and convert those amino acids into proteins, special chemicals inside the nucleus make partial copies of the DNA code. These partial copies, called RNA, look a lot like DNA, but they're shorter, of course, and they're missing one of their sides. Their small shape and size allows them to fit through tiny pores in the nucleus, out to the cytoplasm, and into the mouth of another particle called a ribosome. Ribosomes are protein-building machines. They read the RNA code 3 letters at a time, suck amino acids out of their surroundings, and stick them together in a chain according to the RNA code. As the chain grows, it bends, it folds, and it sticks to itself to form a perfectly shaped protein. Every 3 letters of the RNA code tell the ribosome which of the 20 different kinds of amino acids should be added next. For example, CAA tells the ribosome to grab a glutamine. AGU tells it to grab a serine, and so on. Once a protein is built, it can then go on to do a number of different things, one of which could be to help form a brand new cell. So to answer the original question, what is DNA? DNA is a molecular blueprint for a living thing. How does it work? DNA creates RNA, RNA creates protein, proteins go on to form life. This entire process, as complicated, as sophisticated, as magical as it might seem, is entirely based in chemistry. It can be studied, it can be understood. I'm John Perry, and that's DNA stated clearly. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, make sure to give us a thumbs up on YouTube and share it with your friends on Facebook.
Okay, so you're getting some understanding in there of that. I think I was just reading some stuff in the chat. I think from a person there was giving some expression. I think there's some comments that were made earlier. What I was saying to you in that instance, black men don't control anything on this planet. So you should hold accountable the people who are running the planet at the moment. This is some of the traits and problems that we see. They're not holding accountable the Makasu who are ruling. They've been ruling for the last 6,000 or so years. And so, or certainly the elevation of them is ruling in the last 6,000 or so years. So the planet we see is down to them. It's not down to black men. Are not controlling anything on this planet. Do you understand? So in that regard, and the reality is just a straight reality. Women are coming to the fore and they are ruling, but the reality situation is men are not just going to give up control like that, whether you express your feelings on the matter, and both women and men are now responsible for the world that we sit in. Now, if we're going to get a transformational change, which is what nature is bringing in by way of 2012, and the acknowledgement of female leadership and rulership, the reality is don't make excuses. If the wheel needs changing, women can change wheels. It's who you expect to do it. You understand? It's who is expected. This, when you're saying this person should do it or that's not equality. What you're then is you're giving over subservience in that situation. And the reality of the situation is you will continue to defer if that's how we see it. If that's what you expect. What women are doing in this context, they're taking the newfound leadership and mixing and blending it, overstood, with those sort of old religious traits. You understand? Now, of course, there's certain things like chivalry and these things need to be redefined in the modern context. Well, yes, but that comes in our doctrine, at least, by way of a firm understanding of the role of women, who they are, you understand, their purpose in relation to existence, you understand, and how you frame a society, not because of who she is in that context, but because of how she was designed, what she represents, you understand? And that respect in that context. As I say, whilst we're here in the physical, that is what we have to understand. We're only here for a certain amount of time period, and then we would give to we devoid now to other forms of existence out of the physical body. So gender plays its part here in the here and now for where we are at the lowest level of vibration in the physical. In other states and forms of existence, as we go higher, it does not. So, you know, whether you want to blame men, don't blame men, etc., that's the reality. So, but what we're seeing now is a proliferation, as I say, of women, understood, who are living like men. They're not bringing the qualities of women, you understand, to the society. And women are taking on a lot of leadership roles, and we're not necessarily seeing that change. So, as I say, we can argue between each other and blame this person and blame that person. I don't think black men or black women have the luxury of blaming each other and allowing other races to dominate them and rule them. They need to understand and get with the program and see what the enemy is doing, you understand? And both have to sacrifice, and it may be several generations forward before we get to a point where we have an optimized way of life or way of living. Do you understand? So both are victims of patriarchy in that regard, and both women and men need to elevate. There's a lot of women who are exceptionally material as well as there are men who are exceptionally patriarchal. You understood? So the ones who are, let's say, endarkened amongst us, who have some level of elevation, are the ones who must transform individually, then come together, collectively, and transform their relationship. Now being informed and seeking confidence to build societies going forward that reflect these new cultural identities as described in our Pateracts and actual facts. But all this, he should be doing this, he should be doing that, etc. At the end of the day, in a functioning household, it's what system works best for that household. It's what system works best to produce supreme beings. And things change over the course of the lifetime of a relationship, because children, for example, may need their mother more in a certain early periods because that's the way nature's designed it. But further on now, the child is not as dependent in that regard, understood, as she is on the mother is in the beginning. You understand? So things can change and switch. You understand? So it's more a case of applying intelligence to what's going on and understanding what's going on and applying it to the right environments and what works best, you understand, to produce supreme beings. That's ultimately where you're going to get the transformational change and where we're controlling in our environment. But, you know, black men, they don't control anything within the environment. If anything, what we're seeing on the planet is who is taking over. The Chinese are taking over right now. You understand? The Chinese are the ones taking over the planet right now. So if we're not going to get left behind in the race of race, then we need to basically figure it out. So we haven't got time to be sitting there pointing the finger at who's to blame amongst each other, or aligning ourselves with, you know, European patriarchy or patriarchy that's come out of, as I say, out of Eastern philosophies from the Dravidians on into the Caucasians. You understand? That's got nothing to do with us. You understand? We are the victims of those traits in the absence of any proper information that related to our culture in relation to Wu-Sabat. So both have to clean themselves up from the outside in and inside out, you understand, and figure out how to bring together the circle and the square of both 360 degrees to create that 720 degree optimized environment for supreme beings. Now, genetics and genes, as we can see there, and we put back up, as I say, the trait there to show you exactly the influencing factors, that are affecting your thinking and your thoughts. Yeah, so very important in terms of these subtleties is because if you don't, you can assume that every thought is your own. You understand? Not realizing that actually you've got these sort of influencing factors on a daily based, moment to moment basis, which can affect the type of decisions that you make. You understand? And so when we didn't know about this, yes, we were ignorant. Remember, part of the spell is spiritual ignorance. So that spiritual ignorance, we were ignorant of the fact of these internal factors that has an influence on our thinking. You understand? Now, others understand this, yeah, and they understand the attributes and the traits of that, and its influence both internally but also externally through the form of advertising, do you understand, and things of that nature that can change and alter the influence and the way decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. Understood? So, understanding your double X influence, your XY influence, and whether, as I say, within this, as I say, you can have the positive within or the enemy within. You understand? This is the real understanding of the kind of idea of we talked about this previously. So in one context, yes, the devil and the angel on one shoulder and on the other shoulder, for example, yes, is relating to the involuntary and voluntary, the relationship between your internal voluntary and involuntary systems in the human body, but it's also about agreeable ancestry and disagreeable ancestry, understood, within. And then there's you, yeah, and your own thoughts and your own will and your desires included within that, understood? And so here, what you have to realize is that there was a kind of, I suppose, a conspiracy, maybe you want to describe it as that, but or where we were taught, as I say, to ignore this reality, you understand, and jump, you say, 1,400 years back to a person named Muhammad, you understand, or 2,000 years back to a person named Jesus, or over 3,000 years to a person named Moses, ignoring everybody in between, ignoring the reality of you, yeah, and these influencing factors, and obviously asking yourself, given its importance, given the fact that when we described to you, I think last week, why aren't the sperm and the ovum, for example, considered holy? You understand in this context? Why are we not wearing sperm and ovum icons around our neck? Well, I suppose as Egyptians, we are in the form of the Ankh in that regard. But why are we not wearing a sperm and ovum around our neck? Why is it not mandatory to keep proper records, you understand, of all of these individuals? And when you're of age, you can read about them so that you can see where some of your influencing characteristics and behaviors are arising from, and so that you're constantly in control. They don't jump up and catch you. You understand? Maybe you've got a temper in certain situations, or you react adversely, or maybe certain situations make you really peaceful or happy. Yeah, the life and the liberty of these individuals is important to the way in which we live and understand our traits. So we inherit physical traits. You have the 1 in 30 chance of inheriting the physical traits in any of these ancestors, but because the way they lived is recorded in their DNA, you understand, what foods they like, you understand, what music they like, so on and so forth, all that's recorded. When it sits within those records that sit within our bloodstream and can be triggered, you understand, at any moment by some environmental factors, but more importantly, the snapshot taken of these individuals means that they're still expressing those desires within you. You understand? And in this context, at least, because they don't have a physical body to express those desires, well, guess who they want to express them through? They're going to want to express them through you. So a characteristic of being born in the physical, you understand, is that you have to deal with these 4 generational influences. So you have 4 fathers and 4 mothers in that regard. Now, as we've already explained, so as I say, you're exchanging all of the attributes from these individuals. You understand? If you exchange with somebody external, and whereas them taking on your 30, you understand? And so, obviously, when somebody, for example, cheats on an individual, one of the reasons, I think was explained in a previous class, why, for example, women might become, or whoever, we'll say women for this example, but may become aware of the cheating before they find evidence of the cheating. You understand? Now, where's that paranoia coming from? Well, or what is considered to be paranoia? Is it paranoia, or is it the fact that, let's say that in this context, the male has exchanged fluids with a woman, and then very closely goes and exchanges or deposits those same fluids into his woman at home, let's say, the woman that he considers to be his woman, that in this, what society classifies that he's cheating upon. Well, he's placed the woman's DNA that he's having, let's say they're married, extramarital sex with, inside his wife. So therefore, she now has the woman that the husband has been cheating with inside of her. You understand? Inadvertently. You understand? Because all were ignorant of what was going on. So now, the woman that she doesn't know about is now in her genes as an influencing factor in her thinking. So internally, depending on how sensitive she is, she's going to feel that something's not right. Yeah? And let's say, for example, the woman who the husband is cheating on now wants her husband, the man she's cheating with, to be her husband. So the wife now becomes her enemy. You understand? So now you've got her genes expressing themselves inside the woman or the wife that's at home. You understand? Now wanting ill will towards this wife, if they knew about the wife, internally inside that woman, creating conflict and chaos inside of the person. Understood? Now, as it's shown there in verse sort of 7, really, when a person cheats, and let's say the wife finds out, now we're saying male to female, both can cheat, but let's say male to female in this context. When the person cheats, the reason why the person is physically affected is because the ancestors want the man who cheated, in a sense, genes outside of the body. And so they just want the person expelled, you understand, because of the disloyalty, you understand, whatever, surprise, not expecting it, etc., etc. So they want the person's genes outside. This is why the person starts to feel sick when they're cheated on, because they want the person's genes outside of them. But obviously, through natural nature's rules, that can't happen, you understand, until it's obviously appointed time. The body's working on. DNA can take up to 9 years to leave the person. Do you understand? So you have to learn to live now with this defect or adverse sets of genes in you that you, obviously, through no fault of your own, other than the fact that you're sleeping with this individual who wasn't regulating their desires. Now you've got, as I say, this adverse set of genes inside. So the reason why it's spiritual ignorance to us is because we wasn't aware of this. We've got an enemy within, and the supreme nature of the woman, you understand, insofar as her being a supreme being, meaning that she is, what's the word? Her design on nature is designed to propagate life. You understand? And it doesn't necessarily work on the basis of what we morally think is the right placement. So she's going to sustain life because that's what she inherently does, understood, representing existence, I suppose, or the nature of existence within human beings. She's going to propagate life. You understand? And that's her attribute or trait. Now, interestingly enough, the Master Teacher's got a famous saying which says, the mind is like a field. Whatever you plant in it, it will grow. Do you understand? So in a similar sense, if you understand, whatever you plant in your mind, do you understand, is going to grow. Doesn't matter whether you morally think it's good or bad, that's the attribute or the trait. You understand? It's going to happen. You understand? And so when you start to understand nature and how nature works and how it's optimized, do you understand? It's not there's not a moral judgment within the faculty of it. You understand? It's still going to do what it was designed to do if it's optimized in the environment. It's not going to not do it because you feel it's not the right thing to do, or morally, let's say, even if all of us agreed, morally it's not the right thing to do, that is what's going to happen. You understand? To be a more extreme example, you understand? If you took fire, you can take fire, isn't it, and use it to warm a baby. You can take the same fire and you could burn the baby. You understand? By accident or misuse. So within the inherent characteristic of fire, even though it's got a level of intelligence within it, it can't stop itself from not burning because it's a baby. Do you understand? The light is going to light if the right things and circumstances in place happen. It's not going to light because a baby's playing with it, and babies shouldn't be playing. They can get hurt and injured if they're playing with it. The fire is going to do what it's going to do. You understand? So the rules are the rules. Do you understand? They can't be changed and altered within the natural environment. So you have to work and optimize it around. You have to optimize and work your way around it. This is why there's no such thing as free will. Yeah, because when a person makes certain decisions, understood, there's consequences for those decisions. So when we're talking about equality, for example, and a woman might feel like, okay, well, I should be able to sleep with as many men as I want to. You understand? And I don't disagree with that. You understand? At the end of the day, that is correct. You should do if it's equal. Understood. But unfortunately, your supreme design means that there's consequences that come with that decision making. Now, as we've sought to express, which the society does not prepare you for, what are you and who are you? Because what and the who are you in particular is going to be important, because your behaviors now, if you're trying to be a supreme being, and one of the characteristics of a supreme being is that they have a soul. Well, if you need to be in control, you can't run up the genetic bank account, you understand, expenditure on just doing what you want to do just because the desire of having men, you understand? And in the context of men, you can't run up, you understand, those numbers in an unregulated state. So because each time in this context, at least, if a woman has more than 4 men, for example, then she starts to lose her soul. Because as we expressed earlier, when the genes are inside, they then can start to take control of the individual, and then you're no longer in control of your own decision making. So you can see somebody who wanted to destroy the divine lineage or our link to our ancestors, or the ability for incarnation of supreme beings, for example, would promote attributes that would cause genetic confusion. You understand? And promote genetic confusion, because to them, on the reverse side of it, when they're looking at it from their ancestors wanted them to take in as much stronger genetics as possible because they did their project out of alignment, without the permission, do you understand, of the rules that govern natural nature. They need, obviously, as many people with the dominant genes and those dominant characteristics and dominant traits, yes, to be mixed in with their man or kind of man, you understand, inclusive of their woman, understood, in order to strengthen their genes. So different races, even by way of their different ancestors or different extraterrestrials who created them, have different agendas. You understand? And so if you don't know who is who, you understand, on the planet, another characteristic of the spell was racial blindness. You understand? So you have to know who is who on the planet Earth and the agenda that sits behind them in order to know whether a certain type of approach is for or designed to be against you. You understand? And the master teacher, in introducing this genetic kiss doctrine, you understand, we really have to be of a mindset where we can have mature discussions around these type of issues, because so you start talking about genes, people get very upset emotionally, do you understand? And start looking at, well, the decisions I made in life and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Well, you know, we made a lot of decisions and make a lot of decisions in ignorance. You understand? So maybe not everything can be fixed in your lifetime, but if you make the change now, then your children will make that change, or potentially will make that change. And then the children's children, till we get to a point where we're at least in the knowledge of who and what we are. We're not making decisions out of ignorance, which, you know, as I say, to keep it 100% real. Yeah. If you're driving and you lick down somebody, another human being, you understand, and it was accidental because the brakes weren't working or they malfunctioned, and you hit the person, killed them, you understand? Whether you drove into them deliberately or whether you did it by accident, you still killed the person. You understand? So the results are the same irrespective of the intentions. Now, if somebody is sitting there judging by way of the intentions, then the punishment might be different. You understand? But the actual outcome is the same. So the rules don't align themselves. This is the point we keep making. The rules, despite what the ignorance of the religions have taught, the rules, the environment, sticks to the rules. There's no moral judgments in there. You understand? And even in their religious teachings, their God was subject to those same rules of nature. Hence why, as I say, you know, why did the angel have to visit Mary? She still went through 9 months of labor, etc. So they were subject to the same rules everybody else was subject to. You understand? So this is why we have to delve down, and this cleanup operation that we sort of expressed to you, it is a huge and a massive issue, a gargantuan task is how it was described in the last class in Feeding the Forces. You understand? This misalignment that takes place post-death, obviously within liberty now, innocuously, we can see how, as I say, you can get quite complex issues taking place if you remain in a state of ignorance. You understand? And listen, yeah, you can sleep with somebody, you can get AIDS on the first time. Somebody else can sleep with 100 people, get no sexually transmitted diseases. You can sleep with somebody and you get pregnant, boom, first time. Somebody else sleeps with 100 people, they don't even get no one pregnant. You understand? So these are the things, as I say, that you have to be careful of and be mindful that the rules don't take into account, you know what I mean, your feelings on the matter, or whether it's right or just in a certain situation. That's not how it works. Yeah, so you have to accept the reality of who you are as an individual. Now, as we've said, who's in the driver's seat? Because these influencing factors. And a good example that's given in this particular scroll for you to understand is because, so the 30 personalities, you're sitting there effectively, and you're sitting there, you're in the driver's seat. So you can be, let's say you're a vegetarian for 20 years. Yeah. That is clearly your direct choice, yeah, if you're living it for that long. But you may go, let's say go to a barbecue, and there is chicken wings grilling on the fire, you understand? And you know, they got that special kind of barbecue seasoning, you understand, which they've put on, you know, grandma's favorite recipe, you understand? Now, you're in the garden or whatever, chilling with vibes with people. And obviously, you can smell the chicken wings grilling on the barbecue. So what is that? There are certain physical particles, isn't it, of the chicken, the seasoning, so on and so forth, that enter into your nose. That triggers, yeah, this individual here who loved chicken wings when they was alive. Yeah. And so what then happens as a result of that is that you think from, chicken tastes, or fancy tasting that, but you're a vegetarian, you don't eat chicken. Understand? Now, it's a fleeting thought. You hear it in your body, it goes away. The next day, barbecue's finished, you're just driving up and down the place or whatever, and you're driving and you see a billboard saying KFC, new honey barbecue wings or whatever. And you think, oh, God, I fancy some of those. Remembering that you're vegetarian. Now, the issue is that you drive to the shop now and you respond to that thought, which is not your own. Yeah, it's this individual here's thought. And you go and basically order the whatever honey barbecue wings that they're doing, and you bite into it, and you think, God, I bet it's why did I even buy this? And it's disgusting. Understood. But the issue is that you were influenced one day, you then were influenced another day. So by responding to the thoughts that were clearly not your own, what you do is you bump this individual up a tier. Understood? Yeah. Now, if let's say your reaction wasn't it was disgusting, you thought, damn man, I didn't really realize this was delicious. I really miss chicken. And therefore, you continue now to have secret chicken visits, even though you're vegetarian. You continue to have these secret chicken visits. And what happens? You keep bumping up this person. You bump up again. Eventually, they can occupy the number one spot. And you are sitting as a sub-personality within your own body. This is the power of it can take, because now this individual now is free to express their full desires now, utilizing the vehicle that is you. You understand? Yeah. So they're sitting in the driver's seat, overstood now, and you're suppressed. Yeah. And you'd have to wait for a moment of their sort of weakness to reassert yourself back into the dominant position and being in control once again. Understand? Any questions on that?
There is a question referring back to the videos that you showed earlier, and the question is from Alicia, I think you pronounce the name. Is there any way that these video links can be posted in this chat so I can have them too?
Can't do that live, unfortunately. So we'll post the links when we post the video in our YouTube channel. For this part, unfortunately, but you could do a search, as I say. They're probably quite common to find. I think what is genes, what is DNA. You probably would find it in that regard. But we can't extract the links at the moment. But we'll do that. As I say, when we post it up, we'll put the links against the video on the YouTube channel. in that regard. Anything else?
There aren't any other questions.
Okay. So the influence, in fact, we just gave you one example, but you can see why these factors internally, where you can be influenced internally by your own ancestors and their own desires. You understand? So it's 10. The voice that we're hearing in here, they tell you, some will tell you always the right thing to do. And that's your agreeable ancestors, that inner voice that, no, the way you spoke to that person was wrong. You understand? No. Listen, louder chicken, you're a vegetarian. You've been on your program for 2-3 years. You understand? Yeah, you're doing well. You're doing right. You understand? Then the other voice in the head is saying, boy, you've had a tough day at work today. You understand? You need more protein. You understand? So looking to avoid the discipline, you understand, is the other influence inside and factors. You've got 2, and then you clearly are the decision maker. Now, there is another factor as well, where you're getting external influencing factors. And one of those, for example, as you see in this question here, is, does the body work off of heat or does it work off of cold? Well, obviously the correct answer is works off of heat. And we say that you are what you eat. So we talked about the aspect of our DNA, you understand, that changes in relation to what we take in, decisions we make. So if you imagine now, when you're taking in certain types of food, because your body's working off heat, your internal altar is burning, obviously, that food, because we understand that a chemical burning process goes in every time we breathe. And so effectively, your body is acting like an internal temple for the food that we eat. You understand? And so you're giving off certain odors and aromas that can attract beings, as I say, to you for that reason. Do you understand? Who want to obviously feed off or take advantage of the decaying flesh, for example, in this context, which is being broken down in your own body. You understand? And so, again, can attract discarnate entities. You understand? Walk-ins and things of that nature as a result of, as I say, who you are. Yeah? So this is why, as I say, I'm not going to those deals I think we did before, why we protected our dead, you understand, and kept them entombed and in sarcophaguses and things of that nature to protect from adverse forces, let's say, seeking to, take control, feed off of, you understand, the energy that's contained within that body. And hence why the Saluki dog, which is associated with Anupu or Anabu or Anubis, you understand, sort of a male standing upright with the head of this Saluki dog, because dogs obviously can sense death and can sense the presence of discarnate entities. Do you understand? Hence why that's why they were used in rituals, to be able to detect the presence of forces that were seeking to feed off of the decaying, obviously, body in that context. Hence why spices were packed out in the body and certain organs removed in order to, as I say, stop or this attracting of forces to the body that, as I say, were seeking to feed off of this decaying entity. I'll go through this in detail. Take us a bit away from where we are. Let's do it away. Boom, boom. Okay. Do that. Right. Okay. So you're taking on. You understand the characteristics of the challenges, of being 4 generations, and we understand what we mean by when we're exchanging fluids. You understand, and the fact that we've got this kind of transient DNA in that regard, or the ever changing. based on the environment means that when you exchange genes with a person, you see that if it's, let's say, for example, a long-term partner, that you start to do things in a very similar fashion. In some cases, people start to look like the partner, yeah, or you may take on other characteristics. So maybe you take on physical traits or behaviors that your partner does, you understand, and vice versa. So it might be that you're walking in a similar fashion. Do you understand? It may be that there's certain traits like, I don't know, you put your head in your hand or your hand on your chin or whatever. You both start doing it. You understand? It's a case of because you're exchanging, you're taking on, you understand, the person. It's the equivalent of having a computer and then taking another person's computer, whatever, and taking their hard drive and merging it now with your own. You understand? So you've got all their software, which doesn't necessarily sync in with the way in which your computer works. You understand? So you've got to contend with the reality that this is what happens. You understand? Whether it's positive or negative. So we can see that couples, we've shown this a few times before, but useful for new people, that couples, as a result of this exchanging of DNA, start to look like each other. You understand? Or maybe exhibit the same traits. Yeah? So some people look like brothers and sisters, or it could be physical way in which they smile, or in this context, smiling. Yeah? Similar traits, because you are them, they are you. You understand? And so you can see where too much exchange can cause you a lot of issues or problems. You understand? If as an unintended consequence, I would say, a person seeking pleasure. Now, when we say whoever and whatever, because people see people kissing up their dogs and other pets and animals, which not only does this put risk of creating or putting diseases, which it has done in the past, into the human genome. Yes, because nature's mechanism of protection doesn't want human beings exchanging DNA with animals. You understand? It wants us exchanging DNA with other human beings, not animals. So breaks and protections are put in place, like our immune system deals with foreign entities, to stop those traits and behaviors. But we can see here that it doesn't matter. You understand? As you saw in the video, other lifetimes, other life forms share DNA with human beings, because we're obviously in the same environment. But if you kiss, then you're taking on board, say those traits where we see people kissing dogs and all kind of things. They're taking on board the DNA of that animal. Yeah. So we can see here, as I say, fur to fur. Yeah, the fur to fur relationship we're seeing here. Yeah. In this context. And as I say, this is what happens. Yeah. So irrespective of whether it's the right thing to do or not, this is what happens if you kiss, pets or whatever within the mouth. Now, I think we played this before, but it's a good thing to think about now because of that influencing factor. And, when we say fall in love and we use terms of this type, that, why are we falling? Why are we not rising in love? Yeah, because some interpretations of love or being in love with somebody, it can mean subjugating yourself for the other person and calling it love. Now, we're here today to tell you this is unnatural. You understand? So this is unnatural nature to subvert yourself for the love of another person. You understand? As an individual, you are who you are. You are a unique individual. It's uniquely placed, uniquely birthed into this universe and have a unique contribution, a unique beauty that is, excuse the extra unique, is unique to you. That's who you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to morph yourself into somebody else. Now, obviously, we can take on positive traits, good habits that we learn from other people. Those are positive influence. But becoming your partner, you understand, or mate, is not what is designed to be. Although physically, because you're exchanging, you are becoming them, but you're not supposed to subvert yourself to become the person. Do you understand? So if they like action films and you don't like action films, well, yes, you can get into it or whatever, but if you love films, then you should still love films, you understand? Or whatever, rom-coms, whatever they call them, and not subvert yourself now to become this action person because your partner likes it. Therefore, you're suppressing your love of some other trait because your partner, if it's a positive trait. I'm not talking about negative things like you won't want to get rid of, like smoking or lose weight, whatever the case may be, where these are positive things that you want to get rid of for your own, you know, certain health benefit or whatever the case may be. But we're talking about stuff that is where it's part of who you are or part of who you've become at least, and you're suppressing that because of that word called love. Any questions while I play this tune? I want you to listen to the lyrics of the tune because it pertains to the, I'll say dangers, but the issues that we face as a supreme being manifested into this physical body. Yeah. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. All right, let's play this song then.
What can I do? What can I do? How can I do the things I want to do? When 90% of me is you. My heart no longer does what I want it to. Because 90% of me is you. Gonna be the kind of woman that no man can move. I wanna have the kind of mind that no man can fool. I wanna look you in the eyes without getting weak in my knees. I wanna be able to do without you in spite of my needs. What can I do? What can I do? How can I do the things I want to do? When 90% of me is you. My heart alone does what I want it to. What can I do? Because 90% of me is you. You control my eyes. I can see no one but you, baby. You control my mind. I can think of no one but you. You control my lips. It's long for your tender kiss. I never thought it possible that I could be controlled like this. What can I do? What can I do? How can I do things I want to do? When 90% of me, babe, is you. And my heart no longer does what I want it to. You know why? Because 90% of me is you. Oh, how can I do the things I want to do?
So you can see there the characteristics of, well, I wouldn't say characteristic, but the influence, you understand, and how, you know, a lot of this music, etc. A lot of this music, you understand, he sort of puts that in, and that's our expression or our understanding, maybe of love. And it goes both ways. Just put that in, obviously, from female to male in that context. But this is what we have to understand. You understand? Females obviously have a lot to lose, or sacred feminine have a lot to lose, so they're weakened through the sexual process. Their DNA is weakened through the sexual process. For men, their strength is weakened through the sexual process. But both of us have to understand the use of our sexual powers in this regard. You understand? It's not a case of do what you want. There's consequences to our actions. You understand? And so in ignorance, we can cause damage or cause harm. But now when we know, we can start to see, the decisions that we're making, how it can significantly influence, the fate of others. And if we're to get back to who and what we are and optimize the race, all will have to make sacrifices. You understand? That doesn't mean not having sex, not enjoying sex, etc. But in understanding the science of relationships, you understand who you are and I suppose the consequences of your actions, understanding those attributes that you inherently have, and how you say you can get lost in somebody else's source. You can get lost in somebody else's personality overwhelmingly. Do you understand? Simply because this exchanging of fluids, what can take place as a result. Yeah. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. So I think we've read this a few times before, but this accentuates that point out of the sort of I think it was a Holy Tabernacle Family Guide, something like that, or whatever. But it's a poem, related to, I think, Jibril. The name's gone for me for a second. Jibril, I think it's something. I've forgotten the name now. Very famous Islamic poet. You understand? Or as I say, a derivative of this poem anyway. Khalil Gibran, that's it. And it will come back to me. Khalil Gibran. Now, it says, you were born together, and together you shall be forever. You shall be together when the wings of death scatter our days. You shall be together even in the silent memory of the source. But let there be space in your togetherness, and let the winds of the skies dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Rather, let it be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from the one cup. Give one another of your bread, but not eat from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone. Though they quiver with the same music, give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping. But only the hands of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together. For the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the pine grow not into each other's shadow. Yeah, so so this is a thing for us to understand. Love, understood? Care and these types of words being used, and obviously Wu-Sabat is different, certainly 12 different forms of love, and we have to understand those differences. Love of a child, for example, is not the same as a love of a partner, you understand, mate, etc. So there's a difference there, and we have to understand without being without being careless, in the sense of not showing enough care for an individual, but not loving to the point of, as I say, subjugating your own personality of a known expression, because whoever you're with, or you understand, you're trying to please them or in service to them, but it's too much. You understand? And we can see, you understand, obviously yes, I think there was discussions about patriarchy earlier, where women have been not been in a situation where they're not been able to express themselves. You understand? Because the way how to be a woman has been framed, you understand, in the media expression, which is why Wu-Sabat is important by giving you an alternative or right view, as we would consider it to be, right view of the idea of how a woman should be in terms of reprogramming our mind, you understand, by understanding this part to act as guidance for both obviously men and women to understand, as I say, excuse me, who we should be according to our nature, not necessarily what we've been taught in this society where a lot of things being conveyed, there's ulterior motives, you understand? So you see in a lot of these game shows and things of, you know, game shows, whatever, where people are kissing multiple people in games on the show, the lack of understanding of the impact of that on you as an individual and your decision making, you understand? In that regard, as we've demonstrated that quite significantly to show you how it can be problematic. Yeah, I think I might stop on this particular point then, because I think we're going into now you've got that kind of genetic framework. What we're going to do with this bit now is go into the compatibility issues that arise from interracial mixing. Do you understand? And how, as I say, a lot of people actually don't understand the fact that in these different exchanges that have happened, obviously within people's lives, but obviously over generations as well, that certain genes are not compatible with each other. And in actuality, there's a lot more prevalent, because of obviously those genes are most dominant here on the planet, of black genes across the board. Even people who don't look black may contain black DNA within them. Do you understand? And this can cause incompatibility problems when they seek to mate with their partner. So we're going to go into that in some detail. You understand? Now you've got a good understanding of who you are in relation to genetics. You understand? Yeah, on that side. Any final questions before we close out? No? Okay.
There's no, it's a totally off topic question. I don't know whether totally off topic, and it's also in the chat rather than in the Q&A. I mean, the question is basically asking why what we're doing online and the master teacher has done and is doing, why are we not being prevented from doing that?
Sorry, say that question again.
Basically, the question is saying, why do they not stop us? Why are they not stopping us from doing what we're doing?
I'm sure.
Basically, the question is...
we'd have to get away with what we're saying. Is that what
yeah, basically.
I mean, we're not doing anything illegal, so you understand? We respect the laws of the countries we're in. You understand? We're just speaking the truth. You understand? So it's not they haven't stopped. I mean, the master's doing a 135 stretch at the moment and has been in prison since 2002. So you say stop. And if you look at other black leaders of similar ilk, yeah, they've either assassinated the person, imprisoned them, or sought to defame their character. So, yeah, these are the things that happen. And so if we're more unified, then it'll be less easier for them to pick us off one by one, or to pick off our leaders, especially if we've got a factual basis of our mindset. It's not going to stop them, you understand, from carrying out acts so they can be the ruler that stays in power, isn't it? You understand? So they're the king that doesn't want to come off the throne. They're the president that gets that lost the election but doesn't want to give up the power. They're the prime minister who loses the election and doesn't want to give up power. Do you understand? So this is the problems that you face, and sometimes a wounded animal can be a very dangerous one, where they've demonstrated and proved themselves to not want to cooperate in this context, but rather, as I say, to you understand, destroy or take out what they perceive as threats. But yeah, the understanding is, we have a statement. We say no one wins the race in racism. Do you understand? However, they still want to perpetrate racism as the most racist, you understand, of all of the races and sub-races on the planet. You understand? So even when, let's say, I don't know, a black woman or a black man marries in, you understand, the offspring is never considered to be white. You understand? So as a race of people, you understand, or the way the systems of racism exist around the world, understood, they don't consider even a mixed race person, even if the person that identifies as that, they're still treated as if they're black. You understand? So what it is, I mean, what do? Do we sit on our hands and do nothing? You understand? Obviously, you've got to fight. Your ancestors fought, and we continue to fight for change, for betterment. You understand? To implement or be aligned, as I say, with nature's transformation. You understand? We're moving back to a matriarchal society. It has to be implemented. That have to be implemented. It has to be adjustments in our behaviour if we're going to get change. Yeah? To do things the same way over and over again is considered to be the definition of insanity. So the different way of doing things is the introduction of Wu-Sabat. You understand? And if it's important to us, then we have to fight for it. You understand? And fight for its fairness. The way others are fighting for their expression. You understand? In terms of their religious ideologies. So we've got to be prepared to do the same, irrespective of the challenges that come with that. Okay. Any other questions?
No other questions.
So we'll deal with this kind of last aspect of it, really, about the compatibility of the genes in the next class, which is going to be in 2 weeks' time, whatever that date is. So mate, 1 second. So it looks like that's going to be the 2nd of July. You understand? When the next class is. If there's any change or different to that, we will notify. But 2nd of July, we're a little bit behind uploading, I think, the previous parts, but just had some internet issues, but we've sorted that now. So expect those. I think it's from part 9 or 10, something like that. Expect those to be uploaded this week at some point. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we will park for a couple of weeks, study genetics, study DNA, chromosomes, and so when we get back, we will talk about compatibility in the science of relationships from a genetic perspective. Okay, take care all. Thank you for your time today, and we will see you soon. Take care.